Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today's guest is Linda Kennedy-McCarthy. Linda is the Group HR Director for SIG Group. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Lovely to be here.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. Linda, fill in the gaps. Tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your journey to be the Group HRD at SIG.
Sure. Well, I started my career as a linguist. I speak French, German and Spanish. So I completely fell into HR by accident, really, Chris, working in the oil industry up in Aberdeen. I slowly moved down the country from Aberdeen to Edinburgh and finally to London in 1997, and I've been based here ever since. During my career, I've done both generalist and specialist roles, both of which I've really enjoyed. I've worked in a variety of B2B and B2C businesses, both in the FTSE 100 and in the FTSE 250, across different sectors. In fact, I've worked across a lot of different industries during my career, and also different geographies, which quite appeals to me. I like different cultures. I enjoy traveling still, and over the years I've worked in places like South Africa, Australia, spent a lot of time in Australia, Europe, and rather interestingly the former Soviet Union. I did a couple of years down in Azerbaijan, which was really interesting. So that's been how I've come to arrive where I am. My speciality now is really leading business transformation. And I do a lot of change programs, which usually deliver cost improvements, business efficiencies, but always with a customer and employee focus on really maintaining engagement. And that's probably my area of specialty now.
Fantastic. Very interesting journey. What are some of the things that you feel that you've taken away from having that such a diverse journey, from different organizations to different countries? What are some of the things that you've taken away from that?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is the fact that people are still people, and it doesn't really matter whether you're B2C or B2B, whether you're working in oil and gas or mining or telcos, as I was with EE laterally. It's really the same issues, but the important thing is understanding the business context. So if you can really get under the skin of the business issues, what is it trying to achieve? What are the targets that need to be hit? How can therefore HR help and support? It's really about adapting all the things that you've picked up over your career and using them in the best way you can to the specific business that you're with at the time. And that's what I've found is really, it's a transferable skill set. It's all about making sure that it's right for the business strategy.
Fantastic. So where we are now, what really occupies your mind on a day-to-day basis?
Well, we're in the middle of a transformation here at SIG. So the main thing I'm focused on right now is how HR can help and support the business through this change. This can entail anything from keeping good people, finding new talent, and in particular in some new disciplines, absolutely upskilling our business and really professionalizing how we operate, and also looking at being more cost effective and efficient. So construction is not the most modern of industries. We're probably not the most modern of businesses. So from a technology standpoint, a business process redesign point of view, we're doing a lot of work in that space. We're professionalizing our supply chain and our procurement functions. We're looking at how we price for our customers, and we're also looking at e-commerce. And all of those areas have got a really real requirement for HR to support them.
Fantastic. Could you share some of the project sort of insights that you're working on at the moment within that transformation?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one big thing we're doing is a new ERP in the UK. We've just rolled that out. That in itself isn't a huge thing. It's a different technology, but what it's meant is we've completely redesigned how we operate. So going in there, having a training team up front to do the change analysis and preparation work, then train people through the change, then spend some time in each of the branches embedding it, setting up a call center support line and building business champions as well to help deliver the support has been key. And we're now doing the rollout in other countries. So that's quite a big project. It's taken up quite a bit of my time.
No, I can imagine. You mentioned earlier, obviously, this is a speciality of yourself. You've done this in multiple organizations. Along that journey, what are some of the insights that you could share with our listeners that you've picked up to help, I suppose, go through the transformation as smooth as possible, let's say?
So I think the key thing is communicate. I mean, if I look at, the big integration that we did between Orange and T-Mobile, which was one of the sort of highlights, I guess, of my career, it was all about engaging and communicating constantly. You can never over communicate. If people understand why the change is happening, And if they can get on board with you, that's when you'll actually see the change come to fruition. So my experience, people only change if there's either a benefit to them for the change or a consequence to them of not making the change. So I've always been very clear about the benefits and the consequences, and used that as a way of laying out a story, if you like, from where the business currently is to where the business needs to get to, and what does that then mean for everybody along the way. And if you can paint that clearly, if you can share the destination, the beach, if you like, that everyone wants to get to and lie on at the end of it, and take people step by step along the way, always with benefits and consequences, I found that works really well.
Fantastic. And what are some of the practical ways that HR leaders can do that they can convey that story or that message to everyone in the business, especially when you're working with such large organizations, like, within Orange and was it Orange and EE? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was Orange and T-Mobile
Orange
who
and T-Mobile,
merged
sorry,
to form,
to be EE. Yeah.
merged to form EE, which was interesting.
Yeah. I remember that whole change, actually. It was huge. I remember it very well.
Yeah, it was big. It was 7.2 billion in terms of revenue, two businesses with 12.5 and 7,500 people respectively. And we did the merger in 9 months. And I think the key thing there was really, you've got to adapt to the business, and they were a high-tech organization. So we had everything at our disposal in terms of being able to text people, message them via all kinds of apps. We had a fantastic brand team who really helped paint the picture of our journey. And we had a lot of things at our disposal that we were able to use within that environment from a technology standpoint that helped us reach everyone. If I look at SIG, the opposite probably. We've got branches and warehouses, guys down on sites, very low-tech business. Many of them don't have access to PCs or to any kind of handheld devices. And so we use things like notice boards in the back of the loo doors and, team box talks on site. We use literally what would be quite old-fashioned approaches, but approaches that work.
That work, right?
Actually, the guys are in the canteen having the tea and they read the stuff that's on the walls. So it's horses for courses, be my advice, Chris. You've got to get the right thing for your environment and for your employees. And if high tech works, fantastic. If it doesn't, then you have to go low tech sometimes.
Yeah, I think everyone's so quick to go straight to the high tech, aren't they? And to go and spend a lot of money on these sort of expensive tools that you can use. But as you said, if you have people in warehouses, the people that don't have access to that, the more traditional methods still work, right? They still get a message across.
Definitely.
So in terms of going through these transformations, what are the biggest challenges that you've faced in going through those transformations?
I mean, the cultural piece is always huge. If I take Orange and T-Mobile, on the Orange side, we were orange, and on the T-Mobile side, the guys were pink. And if you cut people through the middle, that's what you would find. And so EE's now yellow and green, right, is the new color.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that. How did I not notice that? Of course it is. Yeah.
So, how do you change someone who's been pink for 10 years to wanting to be yellow and green? And that was the challenge. We were quite lucky because there was a real burning platform that we were able to communicate, which was really the UK was the only country, in fact, in Europe that had 5 mobile operators. So the simple fact of the matter was 5 could not survive. Most other countries of our size and scale had 2, maybe 3, and therefore something radical had to happen. And so, when you've got that kind of a rationale for doing a merger, it really helps you because you can create a burning platform. But that'd be my first piece of advice is, create the need for the change. Because if people are happy, if they believe they're doing well, if they think what they're doing now works, then they're not going to change. Once you've got that burning platform, and in our case, that was the fact that, 5 companies could not survive in that space, then it's what's in it for me and what's going to be good for me from this merger. That's a really key thing to bring out. And for us at EE, it was fantastic. There were environmental benefits because we were merging all of the masts. There were going to be financial benefits because we were able to run the business more efficiently. There was going to be career development beyond what we already had due to the combined companies. And clearly we were going to be the market leader. The flip side of that was that there were clearly going to be redundancies.
Sure.
And that would probably lead me to my third piece of advice, which is just be open and honest. Throughout the whole process, we said, of course, there are going to be redundancies, but we will manage it in the best way we can. We did natural attrition through, early retirements, through not replacing roles when people left. Of course, we did some targeted reduction as well of headcount costs, but we handled it as well as we could. We had no industrial disputes at all, not one, as a result of the process. And people that left, some of them have since come back. So I think that's a sign of a good merger, is when you've exited people from the business and you treat them well, you treat them fairly, you're transparent about your selection process, you're transparent about what's going to be happening in your processes, and then you manage people in a respectful way, which I hope we managed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, the burning platform is key, the what's in it for me, the transparency, the openness and the communication. And then finally, celebrating successes. When we integrated the branch network, which was a raft of mass up and down the UK, when we did that in 9 months, we did a big celebration with our IT guys, because that was just unheard of, that rate of change and that volume of work being done by two competitors. Let's face it, they had been competitors in the marketplace. So we celebrated successes and we made it very clear that 2 was better than 1. We renamed our meeting rooms fish and chips and bacon eggs, salt and pepper. And our whole theme was that, if we got the best of both of the companies and put them together, just imagine how strong that new company could be. And that seemed to work.
Yeah, I think that message definitely was conveyed across the UK, because I remember seeing the advertising. I'm with EE, and I remember choosing, and in my head, in the back, obviously the marketing worked very well, because I was like, they've got the largest spectrum in the UK, the best service, because that did 2 of the most powerful companies combined, and I know the power of that definitely was conveyed to the customers out there, and I'm sure it's no surprise that I think nearly all of my friends are on EE. And also it does provide an amazing service, so that you guys did an amazing job there. Did the things that you've mentioned as well, did you have a separate approach when it comes to the leadership team in terms of merging both of those leadership teams? What kind of advice could you give there, because that's always one of the most difficult elements from the conversations that I've had.
Absolutely, Chris. No, it's always a challenge. I mean, we had 2 of everything, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Where do you start?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, very high level discussions, and I led it, were held with all of the people who were potentially affected, because actually for some of them, some were actually quite happy to go, and that's the first thing not to be scared of, is actually saying to people, look, this is what's going to be happening. Where's your head at? Because some people were saying, you know what, I was due to retire in 2 years' time. I'll retire now. Some of those conversations happened. Then clearly, of course, there were others who wanted to remain in post. And if that was the case and they had a counterpart, I think what is critical is you have a fair selection process. I think most mergers of this size use an external company, which we did. We worked with an external headhunter to do a very independent assessment against very specific needs. So we looked at the new organization, we looked at what we were going to need going forwards, and we did a big assessment against that. And a very strong interview process with a 1-up each time, involving both the shareholders, France and Telecom and Deutsche Telekom, who owned EE. And we just were very clear about our process and very fair. And at the end of the day, I'm sure there are 1 or 2 people that feel they ought to have got the roles, and probably 1 or 2 that maybe didn't know if they would get them. But at the end of the day, we had, I think, as open and egalitarian approaches as we could take. And then again, handled the exits as smoothly as we could. We were very fair to people. We gave them time to exit properly, speak to the teams. We gave them support in finding new roles. And I think that's all you can do in that type of a situation. People, they don't like it, but I think they do accept it. And I think if you treat them well, they respect that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the transformation, right? That's going to happen. And as you said, I think instead of trying to sort of tiptoe around the issue, which I think some organizations do, I think the most transparent you can be, even if it's a hard conversation, it has to be had. So I can only imagine how tough that could be on you guys as well, going through that as well. So it's definitely not for the faint-hearted.
No, definitely.
So, with the cultural element as well, what are some of the things that you did to integrate the teams?
Yeah. Well, we actually moved the integration teams to offices off-site. So Timo was based in Hatfield, Orange were based in Paddington and down in Bristol, and we moved to an independent office and set that up as the joint venture.
Ah, so you moved them both out of their current offices into
We
a new
moved
environment. That
the
makes perfect
integration
sense.
teams. Yeah.
Fresh start. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And those integration teams were tasked solely with doing the integration. So we took them out of their day jobs,
Yeah.
put them full time on the integration. And as I say, did silly things like naming the meeting rooms, fish and chips. And every meeting we had, it was co-led by one person from each side. Every meeting we had, we tried to always bring things from both businesses. So it wasn't a takeover. It wasn't one buying out the other. T-Mobile had much more modern systems than Orange did because they were a newer organization. But Orange had a very, very strong brand team and very well established ways of working internally and externally around the brand. So we simply took the best of each, and that was the whole philosophy, which really helped, I think. The other thing that was great was when the actual appointments were made, it was quite a balanced leadership team. So I don't think that any one side felt that it was a takeover of the one or the other. That was very helpful because that was effectively practicing what we preached,
Yeah.
and walking the talk and demonstrating that. I think the other thing that was key culturally was people could see that something new was coming, and everybody wants to be part of something that's new and successful.
Yes.
So what we did around our positioning was we had overnight become the number one in the market. So we did a lot of work with a couple of people that helped us. The storytellers came and helped us tell our story about moving from being a competitive challenger brand to being number one.
Yeah.
Exactly, to being number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did some work with the guys at Lane 4 around what did that now mean in terms of our leadership skills, how we needed to think and act, how we needed to work with our teams. And so the combination of telling the story very effectively and building up the leadership development aligned behind we're now number one, I think really helped that cultural shift to happen.
Yeah, it seems like you had a lot going in your own favor, right?
It's
very obviously you did the work to make it happen, but it's very rare that a company goes through a transformation and a merger and then at the same time become the leading player in their field. So you had you had a balanced leadership team, etc. So there seems a lot of things lined up there, which obviously, of course, was constructed by you guys, I'm assuming, to make happen. But it seems like it all really aligned.
It helped. It absolutely helped, Chris. You're absolutely right. And the number one in the market, that was not without its challenges.
Of course.
Suddenly you become a leader, not a follower.
Yes.
And then the question is, okay, how leading edge do you go? How much R&D do you deliver? And it meant a big change for the leadership team and how they acted and behaved as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What have you taken away from that experience that you brought into SIG?
I mean, I think a few learnings. The communication one, I know I sound like a bit of a stuck record on this.
No, of course.
The communication one was key.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was make a decision and make it sooner rather than later. Wherever we procrastinated, it came back to bite us. And with hindsight, there's one or two things, not many, but one or two things I wish we'd decided earlier and done earlier. And then once you made your decision, stick with it. Again, I found through experience that vacillating doesn't help. A bad decision is better than no decision. And absolutely a good decision with all the data you've got at the time, make it. And that would be my key learning, I think, after going through the process. Yeah.
Do you believe that a lot of business do get caught up in the strategy and not spend enough time on the execution? Do you think that's something that happens a lot?
I think it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge, and you've got to make sure that you spend the time on the planning, but when you move from planning to execution, you have to execute. For us, not executing wasn't an option. So we had a very clear timeline, a clear program. We had weekly meetings every Friday to check where we were against that. They were very public, they were very open. So if you were off track, it was very evident. And as I say, we celebrated successes, which I think is something people overlook often.
Yeah.
But absolutely, the execution is key. You can have a fantastic strategy, great plan. If you can't execute it, quite frankly, you might just as well not have it.
No, of course. And now working in construction, which is in my mind over the past few years, not my mind, I know it's struggled, right? In terms of the sector, it's quite volatile. Where do you see the biggest opportunity for improvement then within SIG, and how are you currently helping them achieve that through HR?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think a big chance for us is, as you've rightly said, Chris, the sector is not particularly advanced, and nor indeed are the companies that operate in it. And that's not a criticism or being difficult. It's simply a fact, because the business has worked over the years in a very set way.
Hmm.
The building trade itself has not changed significantly over those years, and therefore that's what you tend to find. So we're looking at trying to become more like probably retailers, in fact, or certainly more like companies such as DHL, in terms of how we manage and look at our supply chain, how we move our products around, how we procure our products. So rather than buying them all locally, which historically we would have done probably in each branch, we're now trying to look and see how we can join together and be more effective around leveraging our size and scale to procure. We're definitely looking at how we price. So again, historically, pricing was very local, very devolved. Now that's great because it means a guy in an area will get a sale, but it isn't so great because he doesn't know if he's getting the best price he could for that sale.
Yeah.
So bringing in a pricing framework, bringing in some pricing tools is a big thing for us to get more of a standardization and an aligned approach. And then, of course, e-commerce is coming. And at the moment, your traditional family builder, probably doesn't use his iPad yet. But,
Yeah.
when his son takes over the business or when his
It's
business
true.
is sold, the
Yeah.
people coming in will. So we've really got to be moving our thinking forward in that area as well.
Yeah. I was going to say that actually, because let's face it, e-commerce is already here, right? I suppose it's just the nature of the people that are in your industry. Maybe they're not on it right now, but we know that they will be in the next generation moving forward. Does
Yeah.
this so is this everything you've mentioned, by the way, of course, are huge things. I can only imagine the cost savings in even just supply chain alone if you can streamline that process.
Yeah.
And implement lean in that area, it would be huge for the organization. That then, of course, with e-commerce, is also the supply chain needs to be ready for e-commerce as well. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Does this mean that you're having to bringing a whole new set of skills into the business?
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that. There's a bit of upskilling, definitely
Yeah.
the existing people. There's bringing in some new skills, for example, pricing, pricing experts who do it day in, day out. We've never had that discipline. We've never had that kind of skill set in our business. We're reorganizing as well, because some of this means either streamlining the operational side of things and or skilling and across and upskilling in a different way. Even our sales guys, we're moving from what was probably historically quite a transactional sale, taking an order and delivering an
Yeah.
order to a customer. We're moving up the value chain, getting much more into project work, getting into pricing and bidding at source, perhaps even with architects, because they're the guys who specify the products that get used on the builds.
Makes sense.
And so that's a different skill set, right? That's a consultative sell. That's much more looking at packaging up a group of products rather than just taking an order for, sheets of plasterboard. So we're doing a lot of work around sales effectiveness, and HR are strongly supporting both the development and the recruitment in that area. And also thinking about leadership. That's a big thing, because again, when your business is quite static, things tend to remain the same, right? So leading is pretty easy, because once you know where you are and you know how it all works,
Mm-hmm.
you know what you're doing. But as everybody else is experiencing, Brexit's hit us. The challenging economic climate, particularly in the building trade, is still there. We've got a lot of volatility and change. VUCA, the volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world of tomorrow is here now. And how do we organize and how do we get set up to be ready for that? When you're
Yeah.
in a traditional business that's done things the same way for quite a long time, finding leaders and developing leaders who can manage through that change and lead a big transformation can be quite a challenge.
Yeah, and with these big transformations as well, are you finding that there also maybe a need in some areas of the business for fresh input from outside, right? If you're going to move the mindset of the business towards, say, e-commerce and some of the areas you've mentioned, unfortunately, in some cases, you may need that fresh perspective or some new insight in the organization. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I mean, that's a very fair comment. One of our great differentiators are our people. We compete against very similar organizations and businesses who've got the same products, the same trucks, the same opportunities that we have. But our people are a real differentiator, and we're very proud of that. We've, however, got a lot of people that have been with us for a long time, which by definition means many of them have not worked outside, certainly our industry, and in many cases our company. And also, we've got, as I said, quite tried and tested ways of doing things. So, absolutely, the key thing is getting the right balance of the experience, which we absolutely don't want to lose, the technical expertise and knowledge, which our guys have got so much of, but balancing that with fresh thinking, new ideas, people coming in from other organizations who've done things differently, who can help us to do things differently, and people who've come perhaps from more, you mentioned lean, but lean, Six Sigma,
Yeah.
that kind of way of thinking,
Yeah.
where you build a continuous improvement culture, is absolutely where we want to go. So we're trying to supplement the existing skill set where we can, and really build some capability and bring in some fresh thinking to sort of partner with and go hand in hand with the great technical knowledge that we've already got.
Fantastic. Well, on the point of skills as well, where do you see in your own department the future of the skill set in terms of how it's evolving at the moment as well? So in terms of the HR skills, what skills do you feel will be more important moving forward in HR?
Sure. I mean, I think dealing with change will be key. Being able to handle ambiguity, being able to flex, being able to look at more adaptable solutions will be absolutely critical. I think being commercial is just it's a given nowadays.
Yeah, of
You're
course.
not
Yeah.
there for your HR skill set. You're there to look at what the business
Exactly.
needs and really take a commercial approach. The other thing that I think is changing massively is the focus on data. Huge focus on data and being able to use analytics and understand, analytics and present insights. I think that's a really key aspect of HR that I've definitely seen change over the years. And I think HR are well placed to do that. So using facts and figures, providing information upon which to base decisions, and looking to the future. And being able to adapt the way that we work. People don't talk now about the career ladder, do they? It's the career lattice. It's moving in all directions, up and down, across. And I was talking the other day to a guy who's a futurologist. It's not a lovely job to have, but he's a futurologist.
No one can say that he's wrong either. So
well, exactly. That's a great
not
place
yet anyway. Not yet.
But he was saying, and it's true, that the world of work is going to change beyond all recognition. People are going to hold 2 or 3 roles. They may not even go to a workplace, or if they do, it'll be like passing through a station. And all of this, I think HR have got to be on the front foot around and really be aware of the changes that are coming in the workplace, to how we operate with artificial intelligence, with the whole robotics and technology piece, and look at what we need to do, to support the business through all of that, because it's going to be a whole new world.
It is, and it's something that is happening now as well. I think this is a conversation that comes up often at our meetings as well. And everyone seems to be at different parts of their journey, but it's certainly exciting for HR because those analytics are only going to empower those conversations that you're having right in the boardroom. It's both having the emotional intelligence combined and experience combined with the data, right? It's a balance of both, and you need, in this day and age, you need both, right? It can't just be one or the other. The experience that you've had in your career is so valuable, and then combining that with real-time analytics, it's going to be very exciting moving forward to see how that progresses as well.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Sure.
Well, that leads us quite nicely onto our quickfire round, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have no more than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
Wow. Okay, I'll do my best.
No pressure. What was the number one thing that was holding you back from being a senior HR leader?
I think at my level, it's the REMCOM thing, isn't it? You can't get the REMCOM experience without being a senior HR director, but you can't become a senior HR director until you get the REMCOM experience. So that would be the big thing, I think, that held me back from the big group roles, and you just got to find a way to break the catch-22 and get it somehow.
Perfect. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Worry only about the things you can do something about.
Great. what's one book that you'd recommend to our audience and why?
Gosh, I'd be hard pushed to pick one.
You can name more than one. Don't worry, people always.
Okay, okay. Then
I'll link them all in. Don't worry.
Fiction. I would go with. I love Harlan Coben. He's my favorite author, and one of his original books was called Tell No One. And Tell No One is a fabulous book. The back of it reads, his wife disappeared 23 years ago. Today she emailed him.
Oh, wow.
That's quite a nice one.
That is.
Business-wise, I'm a huge fan of Daniel Pink. I really like Drive, where he talks about the need for autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That really resonates with me, and that would be my business book I would recommend.
Fantastic. And could you share one internet resource that you use to keep up to date with current events or to help streamline your own workflow?
Yes, I'm quite a fan of the TED Talks. I like hooking into those. I think they're really quite short and sharp and interesting. And I also use Get Abstract. They do summaries of books because I don't often have time to read all a book, but I quite like to know what the key things are, and Get Abstract do that.
Oh, great. I haven't come across that one yet. I'll certainly check that out. I think with TED Talks as well, sometimes I just get too caught up. I'll look at my time 3 hours later, I'm still there, just consuming one after another. So it certainly just shows how the change of how people are consuming content now. Yeah. So I think it went from, paper to video, and now it seems that we're moving towards audio. So it's a complete change there. What's one thing about in your business that most excites you today?
I think in SIG, it's the potential. We have got huge potential in this business to improve. And if we're managing to do this well, doing things in the way we currently are, which isn't always the best or most modern way, imagine how good we could be if we could get it all right. Potential, definitely.
Fantastic. I suppose, again, like every other HR leader who's dealing with change, this is what gets you straight out of bed every day, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, look, Linda, you've been a great guest and you've given us some fantastic, actionable insights. So I really appreciate you doing so. So thank you for that. Give our listeners one parting piece of guidance and also the best way to get in contact with you if they wish to do so.
Okay. My one piece of guidance, I think, would be that, experience tells you what to do, but confidence allows you to do it. So if you present with confidence, I think you can pretty much pull off anything.
Fantastic.
And the best way to reach me is I'm on LinkedIn, and my contact details are there. So please feel free to reach out.
I'll make sure I'll link your name in there so I don't get it wrong, Linda.
Thanks very much, Chris.
No problem. Well, guys, head over to hrdealers.com. There you'll find all of the show notes on the episode, everything we've been talking about, all of the resources. Linda, thank you again for sharing your journey with our listeners, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chris.